Hello, everybody. My name is Achim Ammann from Black Label Properties. Today we have our guest speaker, Mr. Uwe Bottermann. He's a lawyer solicitor here in Berlin, Germany. And the topic today is rent ceiling, rent freeze, other regulations on the Berlin property market. What you need to know as a landlord, as a tenant, as a buyer, as a seller, what's really important for you to be aware of here in Berlin, Germany. Hello, Mr. Uwe Bottermann. Nice to have you here tonight.
Good evening. Hi.
Good evening. I'll just quickly introduce Mr. Bottermann. So Mr. Bottermann is running his law firm in Berlin since 2007. There are around 35 people, 8 lawyers, including 2 notaries, 1 tax advisor, and 3 legal Wirtschafts... wie heißt das auf English?
Well, we call them paralegals, I think. So they've got law degree, but they're not admitted to practice law, and they can't go to court. At the same time, very helpful in advising clients on commercial matters. That's why we have them.
So your expertise in the transaction process and managing transactions between Germans, international clients, and of course between Germans as well. You have clients who are large corporate firms, funds, private family offices, but also private individuals buying single apartments, single houses, or multiple homes. So Uwe, thanks for having you here tonight. We already covered a lot of topics in German, of course. So I would like to start with my first question. What's the current regulation market in Berlin for international investors? What do they need to know if they want to buy or sell properties in 2021?
Well, currently, I would say not much more than they should know anyways. My advice always is to not necessarily look at the current regulatory market, but to familiarize yourself with not only the contract that you're going to be signing when buying and selling properties, but rather also familiarizing yourself with the regime that applies in your holding period, i.e., what are the regulations on the rental market? What about financing? If you're so inclined, what about building or extending the building that's there? Having said that, the obvious point to look at, and then again looking at the current market, is especially in Berlin, is are the rental regulations, which are of course a conglomerate of rules emanating from the civil code, which stipulates the rental landlord and tenant law, including the rental price break or Mietpreisbremse has been in effect for several years now, that regulates the pricing when reletting a vacant apartment according to the law. And obviously now, fairly recently, for about 1 year now, we've had the rental cap law in Berlin, which is under judicial review in the Federal Constitutional Court at the moment, for several reasons. Is it a law that's been passed effectively by the Berlin legislature? Were they entitled to do so? And B, is it a law that is effective in terms of the substance, or does it provide for regulatory means that are above and beyond what any legislator could do? I know you're going to ask me about the chances of this judicial review being successful in the Constitutional Court. And as I said before, the jury is still out on that. We know we will have a decision, hopefully in the second quarter of this year. In my book, the likelihood is that the Federal Constitutional Court will quash at least parts of this rental cap law, and that those will be the parts where the rental cap law provides for objective caps on the rents by looking at a table which stipulates the highest or the maximum rents just by looking at the date of construction of each building. In my book, that is something that the court would hopefully rather strictly consider unconstitutional, whereas the second measure under the rental cap law, which is the rental freeze, the rents are frozen currently at the state that they were in on the 18th of June 2019. the argument to quash that for constitutional reasons would be somewhat more sophisticated, and I wouldn't be able to predict whether the judges in the Constitutional Court consider this unconstitutional as well.
Thank you, Uwe. In terms of regulation, when you are looking at a property seller or property buyer here in Germany, and you're coming from a different continent or just maybe a different European country, how do you see the biggest challenges for these people? I mean, when they enter the market or when they want to sell the market, I mean, we both have clients who are, having hold property in Germany since 10, 15 years. And if they now sell the property, they double, triple, or quadruple their investment because they have bought, of course, at the right time. But again, we have a lot of regulations here. I think that's a big topic for a lot of people out there, especially when they enter the market and when they pick up the phone and talk to BK Law the first time, they just run away and say, oh, I will never buy property in Germany. But of course, the market is very positive and strong. Yeah. So maybe another question on that, how do you protect your clients on that, or how do you educate them?
Yeah, well, there again, first and foremost, the biggest threshold for market entry is a language and a cultural barrier. Is to have a foot in the door, is to be able to talk to the people here, not only in terms of the language, but also in terms of the know-how. So that is exactly what we try to do. So we try not to be like many. Or like many lawyers are perceived to be, where a client comes to me and says, I want to buy this, and I tell them, no, it's too risky, don't buy it. What we try to do is to indeed, as you say, educate our clients, to explain to them the legal surroundings, but also the commercial surroundings, the current market that they're entering into, and to provide exactly that sort of home base for them when talking to the seller, if they're buying, to the bank, to you guys as agents, maybe even, and basically to be the rock that they can attach themselves to in the big sea of the German property market. And I think that's it's sort of something that goes beyond the legal advice, but we have experiences for the past 13, 14 years since we're doing this job for our clients, that the legal advice and safeguarding our clients, that's something that is expected of us, and we are of course happy to do that. But the main job is to provide the necessary comfort for them to be able to make the decisions that they need to make.
Yeah. Thank you, Uwe, on that. So I think which is important for you as an international investor or owner here in Germany is you always need a good lawyer to make sure all the transactions run smoothly. It's all very different compared to the UK, France, Spain, or Italy, or even the US. We have a very different law system, which runs through notaries. So you can even appoint a BK Law. They have 2 notaries in their office who can act as a notary, and then of course process the transaction for you. So that's also possible, and it's quite important for you. So in Germany, the notary is quite important, and there's one single date of exchange of contract, which is at the notary. So everything you do before the notary date is not legally binding, except Uwe corrects me on that one, but it's not really versus the paper which is written on. So you always have to be aware of, it's more of an emotional thing to generate trust. Hence, you have agents in Germany, and they have quite a different role than maybe in the UK or the US, because we don't have that MLS system, or it's quite difficult. So for you as a buyer, it's always important you get English-speaking people on the ground who know the market for a few decades, I would say, and know what's happening. When we now come to the regulations here in Germany, which is of course the topic here of that webinar tonight, and please feel free to ask questions. We have one question which we will cover in a few minutes. But just to stay a little bit more further on the regulations, so Uwe already discussed the rent ceiling, the rent cap. We call that Mietpreisbremse. I'm sure you've read that in different magazines, newspapers worldwide. We have that decision in summer this year. The likelihood that there will be a change by the federal court is quite high. At least they're going to change part of that law. However, you should not wait or get in panic if you want to sell or buy, or you want to be active, because there are enough regulations already out there who are covering the social rental law here in Germany. and they will stay on place. So German property will always be heavily regulated, which us as a broker, just for you guys to explain, is also a good thing. I mean, we don't want situations where tenants, have to leave their homes one day to the next. We are a social welfare state here in Germany, which is a very positive thing. And it also empowers people, to have a great lifestyle. So there are a lot of pros to have a social rental law. However, in the last, I would say since 2013, the law has changed a little bit and the tenants are getting overprotected, which we already can see. There are a lot of different topics I would like to ask Uwe in detail. Please also feel free to contact him directly. You find his website under BK Law. You just Google him up and you can find a link to his website on our website. One big question is the so-called Vorkaufsrecht, by the Senate of Berlin or by the cities of Berlin. Could you please explain what that means?
Yeah, that's it's the preemption right, sometimes called the right of first refusal. Preemption right is the correct term, and that applies, just to get everybody on the same page, applies only to complete buildings. It doesn't apply to condominium flats or apartments. It applies to complete buildings only. And at the moment, it applies only to buildings which are located in a social protective area that has been designated previously by the appropriate district in Berlin. So it's a Milieuschutzgebiet or social protection area. In these cases, the respective district can opt into a purchase contract that has already been notarized. So the procedure is so that the notary, after exchanging the contract, would deliver a copy of the contract to the local authorities and request their approval to go ahead with that sale. Or to exercise their preemption right. For that, the district has a period of 2 months to consider. In those 2 months, they will either issue a so-called negative certificate, which is something that they would have done for the better part of my legal practice, at least, basically from anytime in 2005 to about early 2017. That would have been a standard procedure. Now, since 2017, the districts have reinvented this preemption right, where they have now decided to make use of it quite significantly in those social protection areas. And the district will exercise this preemption right if in Berlin the district finds a city-owned housing company willing to purchase the building for the same price. And if the buyer doesn't submit to certain further obligations on how to treat the building, how to treat essentially the tenants in a way that the rents don't go up significantly. In that case, then if that doesn't happen, the district will exercise the preemption right, and the seller will sell eventually the building to the city-owned housing company, will collect the same purchase price as agreed in most cases. And the buyer will go empty-handed, unfortunately. So the main job for us as lawyers representing the buyers is to negotiate and haggle about with the district what obligations is the buyer required to sign into in order to keep being able to buy the building.
Okay, so could you just give me an example? What sort of obligations could be?
Well, the obligations are essentially not to split the title. The obligations are essentially not to do modernization measures with regard to energetic modernizations, so energy efficiency measures, only insofar as you are legally bound to do them. Will you be allowed to do them? Obviously, you're not allowed to demolish the building, so you're supposed to keep living space that's there. And the districts currently try to implement in those obligations a further obligation to adhere to the rental price break or the Mietpreisbremse as stipulated in the civil code, which doesn't add a lot of obligation because the landlord is bound by those stipulations anyways. It's only the district will then be able to enforce them along with the tenant.
Thank you, Uwe. I just quickly want to respond to that question here, and then we move on to regulations. So what are the points to consider when deciding whether to buy an already refurbished apartment or an apartment to be completed or completely renovated? What are the usual costs for a full renovation, walls, floors, kitchen, bathroom, electrical and heating system? This is a, I would say detailed question. Please feel free to contact me directly after the webinar. Send me a quick email. Completely cost, it depends on the size of the apartment, the condition, and to buy an already refurbished apartment, of course, you have guarantees from the seller. If it's a professional seller, you usually have 5 years guarantees on that. But also, again, that's something you can contact Uwe as well to double check what are your rights as a buyer. I'm assuming you're a consumer, not a professional buyer, which again is something you need to double check. And if you want to know the exact costs, you need to know us the condition before and after the renovation. And of course, what kind of materials have been implemented, how big is the apartment, where is the apartment? Because of course, Berlin is more expensive than if you construct somewhere in the middle of Germany, because the workforce is more expensive there. Again, this is something, please contact me directly. If you want to know, we have spreadsheets where we can give you average costs for the materials and the craftsmen, and then you can check that up. There's also a so-called Baukosten-DIN. You can Google that up. It's a German version where you can see the cost for refurbishment. It's in Germany, everything has a DIN norm, which is Uwe, maybe you can help me how to translate a DIN norm. It's a difficult one.
I think it's norm is norm, right? But it's technical norms provided by the German Institute for those technical norms. That's the DIN,
Yes.
Deutsche Industrienorm Institute.
I think it only exists in Germany, maybe in Austria and Switzerland, but it's very strange. Again, but it gives you an indication of what kind of cost you would expect. If not, please let us know. You can tell us the floor plan, the location. I think we would give you the cost pretty detailed. To move on the English sections, when it comes to regulations, Uwe, how do you see the future regulation in Germany when it comes to buying and selling properties? Do you see any changes, future changes, political events?
Well, the buying and selling process has been the same since the law began, I would say, or at least since the legal system that we are living in at the moment. So I don't foresee a lot of changes there. The regulatory environment experiences a lot of changes at the moment. The preemption right for buildings is one which is going to be extended according to drafts that we have seen of new laws, and in addition, the environment will change when it comes to buying and selling apartments, because again, due to laws that are being proposed, the options for splitting the title in existing buildings will become as narrow as zero if and when that law comes, which essentially means that despite the fact that the framework for buying and selling apartments will remain the same, there will essentially be no product, certainly not in Berlin, for old building condominium apartments. New build is another story. However, the market there at the moment, to me, looks like not enough is being built, not enough product enters the market to take the pressure out there. So again, regulatory, not a lot of changes. The environment changes quite significantly when it comes to buying and selling both individual apartments and complete buildings as well.
Yeah. There's another question of one of our listeners tonight. Any chance the Berlin Council could soon make 2014 to 2017 apartments, so new but not very new, part of the price rental cap?
Yeah, that is a scenario that nobody hopes for, but it is a scenario that we need to think of. Currently, yes, new build is exempt from the rental cap law, and that is new build, which is, I think, anything after 2014. So the time frame you're looking at here, 2014 to 17, is exactly correct. There is a worst case scenario that I would consider if I needed to consider the worst case scenario, which is if the Federal Constitutional Court does not hold the rental cap law, the Berlin rental cap law invalid, what will happen then? Currently, the rental cap law is made for 5 years, starting in February 2020. That doesn't mean it will end in 2025. It will have to be reviewed, and it might be extended. And if it will be extended by another 5 years, the thinking that the listener here gave is absolutely correct. Will the renewed rental cap law still stipulate that apartments constructed after 2014 are new built? Or will they extend that and say it's everything that's built after 2017 or even after 2019 is considered new build and thereby exempt from the rental cap law? We don't know that, but it is a scenario that in my dark nightmares I have to consider.
Yeah. So, yeah, I fully agree with Uwe. We don't really know, and this is also a topic why a lot of developers are not, we call that producing product anymore, because they don't build properties for the buy-to-let market. They just build properties for people who want to live in these apartments rather than for investors. So again, this will be another shortage of property to the Berlin housing market, and you already can see that in the statistics. And I think not only Black Label, but I think Immobilien Scout, a lot of media has covered the topic that less and less developers are building properties, which means that the property prices are going up further and further, even through the Corona pandemic. And you already have seen that in the year 2020. We were all very scared when, of course, we had this pandemic in January, February, March last year, when we knew that there's something is coming up. And you already can see that on our YouTube channel, how our experts were talking about that risk. And I myself was very scared about that topic as well, because no one really knew what's going to happen. Again, I want to emphasize, which is very, very important for you as an investor, is access to capital. And this is important. So much more important than the regulation, if it's a rent cap, if there's no rent cap, is what's your interest rate, how you can secure your investment. And there again, in Germany, we are very, very slow, stubborn, and not very flexible, as you can see in the pandemic and in many other cases, when it comes to innovation. Yeah? However, when it comes to security for you, it's very, very high. So we are very slow when it comes to make a decision, or when it comes to the decision-making process. But for you as an investor, you can rely on the political situation in Germany that they are not really building more apartments. You can see that in the statistics. You already can watch a few other experts here on the channel when it comes to the new building permits, how many new building permits have been granted in the year 2020, how many new Bebauungspläne, so larger areas, have been granted that you can build on properties. And we don't talk about social housing, we don't talk about luxury homes, we just talk about normal housing for normal people who want to live in the city center, and the supply is close to zero these days. That's why prices are going up. And anyone who can watch in San Francisco, Lisbon, London, I don't know how many other cities have tried a rent freeze, you can see what has happened there. And you would be, I think, quite well advised to consider what will happen in Berlin. Let's say in 10 years, let's say the Berliner Mietendeckel or the rent freeze will last for another 10 years, which again, no one really thinks that's going to happen. But again, in front of the court, you never know what's happening. So this could happen. Then you don't know what's happening. Again, the more and more people will sell their apartments to people who want to live there themselves. And that's exactly what we already could see in the year 2020. Even in the year 2019, when we could already tell that something like this can happen, the market is quite buoyant. So please don't wait if you want to make an investment decision. We see prices going up, even though the interest rates have went up from 0.6 to 1.2%. So German citizens, German taxpayers who are earning money in Germany and have a German address, they could borrow for less than 1% interest for a 10, sometimes even 15-year mortgage contract. Again, that's something you should look out for, not only as an investor, but anyone who wants to buy property in Germany. We don't have variable mortgage contracts. In usual, we have fixed mortgage contracts for a longer period of time. So please make sure you get a good mortgage broker. Here's another question: possibly to get a loan before having a permanent residence. Yes, that's possible. We have a special mortgage broker, Martin Bonnet. You can contact him, and please contact our office, and we are happy to send you his contact details. Yes, that's possible. However, you will not profit from the very low interest rates. So you have to pay a higher interest rate and you have to come up with a higher deposit. this is something we could cover for you. There are not many lenders who are accepting that condition. I think we have given you already a clear update on the Berlin Mietendeckel or the rent ceiling. Please feel free to contact BK Law if you have further questions. Tax implications, they already have a tax advisor. You can also contact them when you buy an apartment and own an apartment. However, we have the stamp duty here in Germany when you buy property, which is quite high, especially in Berlin, 6%. However, the land tax or the land taxes year on year are compared to other countries worldwide fairly low. However, they are now trying to change that. At least they're trying to make a more fairer approach, which is based to the value of the property. Very hot topic, the topic of today's webinar. It's a tax topic, but please feel free again to contact BK Law if you want to know the precise answer for maybe a precise property you're looking at. Growth in property, yes, we see high growth rates. However, we are one of the most conservative brokers you can contact in Berlin. In the last 4 years, I've always been wrong because I'm always too negative. I see growth rates between 3 to 5% year on year. Uwe is already smiling, and I'm always wrong. So please don't trust agents telling you 10% growth rate, 15% growth rate year on year. This won't happen. I mean, sorry, even if I'm wrong, I'm happy that I'm wrong. But if you make an investment decision, please budget inflation between 1 and 3%, and the growth rate should cover your inflation. Everything else is pure speculation and luck. And the likelihood that you have a higher growth rate is, of course, good, or the chances are good. Plus, please don't buy property because you think the price will be double or triple in 3 years or 10 years. That's not something we would advise you on. Important is that your cash flow is fine, you have access to finance. So we have another question in the chat. Lucy? No? Okay, it's fine. I thought there was another question. So then we have the impact of the new legislation on buying and selling apartment buildings in Berlin. Do you see any new legislation coming up, Uwe, on this?
Well, that's the for buildings, certainly that's the draft that I was talking about already, to change the federal building code, where there are a couple of Easter eggs in there next to the effective prohibition of title splits, which doesn't have it's not going to have an impact on buying and selling much. However, this preemption right, which up to now only applied in those social protection areas, essentially, will be extended according to this draft, and the exercise period will be prolonged as well from 2 to 3 months. So transactions will take significantly longer. Because we have to deal with a delay of 3 months rather than 2, and more properties will be affected by this preemption right. That's what I can see for sure happening when this law comes into effect. Otherwise, I can't see anything from a regulatory perspective. That there is a chatter always here and there. Should we prohibit foreigners from buying real estate in Germany? But again, that is something that I don't think will come to fruition. Hopefully, during my professional career, because it's just too highly prohibitive and prone to circumvention. Because if you just set up a German company and you can still buy, so I can't see that actually coming into effect here.
We have 2 more questions, I think. So I just want to cover this to the end of the show. Claiming self-usage. That's something a lot of people are asking us. They see listed apartments with us or with other brokers, and they say, hey guys, I found a cheap apartment, 30% cheaper, 40% cheaper. It's a tenant in there. I want to buy this. It's much cheaper than the property you offered me, Achim. I'm going to buy this and claim self-usage. How do you see that, Uwe?
Well, highly risky. German tenants, first of all, now this is not a legal opinion, but it's just one from experience. German tenants know their rights very well, and they know how to protect their rights, and they are very protected. So even despite the fact that you might, as a buyer, have the chance to claim self-usage, depending on the timing of your sale and the timing of the title split, the tenant may be protected for 10 years in the apartment. But even if those 10 years have expired, so you've kept the apartment for 10 years, and then you want to claim self-usage, or if they don't apply, but because of the timing, you'd have to prove in each individual case to the tenant and possibly to the satisfaction of a court that actually you want to use this apartment for yourself or your direct family. Which is going to be a highly stressful undertaking. And I would always advise, before you even consider buying an apartment like this, please consult with a litigation expert in that field to see and develop your chances on success of that. Now, it's not impossible, but it's not as easy as some might want to make you believe.
Yeah. And so again, if other agents are telling you it's not a problem, you should get nervous and contact a good litigation lawyer on this. If there is a reason why these apartments are cheaper, yeah, I mean, the sellers aren't stupid. So if they sell an apartment 30–40% cheaper than a vacant apartment, there's a reason to that. And so please be aware of it. Last question. We have a lot of furnished question. People are saying, oh, hey, I'm going to sell or rent out furnished. I don't have to pay or I can get a higher income on the rental side from my tenants. I will not be subsidized to the rent ceiling or the rental laws here in Germany. How do you see that, Uwe?
Well, technically speaking, this is wrong. To be straightforward here, if you apply the regulatory environment, the rental price break, the Mietpreisbremse of the civil code, as well as the rent cap law, both of these measures apply to furnished letting as well. The rental cap law, the Berlin law, makes specific reference to furnished letting. It says the highest possible rents that we stipulate in this law apply to residential space regardless of whether it's furnished or not. So any way to circumvent that by having a third party offer the furniture, by adding a service agreement, by, I don't know, letting a storage space along with the apartment in a separate rent contract, letting a car park along with the rent contract, letting an e-scooter along with the rent contract for prohibitively high rents, you will always be caught on these things. So my advice is to adhere to the regulatory stipulations that are in place as long as they are effective. And again, there is light at the end of the tunnel where the Federal Constitutional Court will decide either way in the second quarter of 2021. Then we will certainly know more about the rental cap law, but circumventing existing laws certainly isn't the right step into a new market. And also, even if you're experienced, I wouldn't advise trying to become creative with the law. Trying to become creative with the law is never a good option, regarding if you live in Germany or elsewhere. So just for you as a few tips, please watch the YouTube channel. We have a special topic on rent ceiling. It's of course mainly in German, but also a little bit in English. We also have a section with Mr. Janis Sakris, he's the CEO of our letting and management company, and we explain you in detail how we operate with apartments who have been completed before 2014, who are being rented out furnished. There's always a high risk. However, we have measures and means to protect you as much as possible. However, there's no way around the rent ceiling and the Mietpreisbremse and everything else. So Uwe is completely right. Legally speaking, you are not allowed to collect any further rent or additional rent that is over that cap. If you want to know further, please contact us in a one-by-one question. But all the promises you see out there, and there are a lot of startups in Berlin who are promising, yes, I will rent out the furniture to your tenant. We make sure you're fine. This is simply not working, even if they say otherwise. And please don't work for that, because we've already said that in the German section. There are even more startups who advertise, oh, I lower your rent. You don't have to pay any money to me. You just give me a commission once I've lowered your rent. And so please don't rely on these ideas. Uwe, is there any topic we haven't covered tonight from your side? Well, plenty, but as far as the topic of this webinar goes, I think, well, I hope we've answered all the questions. I think we've had a good short introduction here on the matter. Any further questions, as you said before, contact either of us. Be in touch, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, great. Thank you everyone for listening tonight. Thank you, Uwe. Please contact Uwe under BK Law. You can find his website. And if you have further questions, please feel free to contact us, and we are happy to help you. Thank you for watching tonight. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.